A boulder. Fuck. He has so many things.
Speaking to what he became is difficult without talking about where he came from.
Boulder was born out of everybody's realization that scale in VR is super fun.
I mean, the only reason I get to be here is pretty much because of Boulder. So Boulder and I have been connected from the start.
He was basically our first narrative character in our very first demo that wasn't the Gallery 6 Elements.
Some people didn't even notice he was there, which was really weird because he was like this giant rock monster that was in your face and talking to you the whole time.
Elevator demo for Valve in 2015, which was the first time anybody kind of experienced room scale VR.
It was just so overwhelming. There were so many things coming at them, and they were looking at the controllers trying to figure out what was going on.
So I think he's been redone 10 times, maybe?
Well, because everything we did back then was very literal. So it was, in the earliest days of the gallery, Boulder was literally a part of a mountain. Like, he ripped his body off the mountain, so he was a giant walking boulder.
We just went right to Rock Monster because so many of our inspirations for the gallery were the older 80s fantasy movies, and when I think of the giant friendly character, it's the rock giant from Neverending Story.
So before Boulder was a computer character, we actually were toying with the idea of doing 3D video capture.
We were going to try to do him with the FMV actor, like an actual real person in prosthetics and everything.
It was actually really cool, but the technology just wasn't working. What we really needed at the time was volumetric capture, but it didn't exist then. The first 3 years or so of Cloudhead, so 2013 on, we were kind of locked into one mode of telling the story of the gallery, and it was a lot more traditional. It was, you were looking for these ancient paintings, and they were kind of mystical, and you could walk through them into these elemental worlds.
And we happened to work on the fire level first, then Boulder happened to be that fire level god. So he just kind of kept getting pushed into each version of the game. But originally he was the fire god.
And at that time he had a really funny Russian accent and talked to you.
She said you would come.
That voice actor is one of the vets from the industry. He's somebody that we come back to time and time again because he's just really versatile. He can do a lot of different characters. I don't think you've heard the last of them, frankly.
We still had the beats and the characters that we wanted to showcase, but it became more about how we ground them more realistically into the story we were telling.
Oh, that looks sick. I don't think I've seen that one before.
This is where we started moving more into a plant-based life form than rock.
The one-arm thing was because Boulder was falling apart, and in the very early versions of the script, you were going to help make Boulder whole.
And then ultimately he became, kind of split in two, so that he had his second half was actually a big part of the story, and kind of reuniting him with his second half became the goal of the player late in the game.
Yeah, and so this is a weird one because it must be in between when we started shifting our ideas about what Boulder would actually be on the planet and how he was controlled by the beings that took over Ember.
Then we just figured out the last details with this one, and that resulted in our current Boulder, who kind of looks like Man-Thing now that I think about it.
So this is quite far along into Emberstone, and at this point we had a good handle on silhouette, and we were still playing with face ideas, trying to get a face that was scary but approachable.
After they kind of fade back in and they're in his hand and they see how Elsie is talking to him and treating him, I think it's a nice moment that that there's not everything is hostile here.
Here's a shot from inside Boulder's hands. I absolutely love this moment. It's one of my favorite moments in the game.
Some people looked at this and thought his head was upside down, which in retrospect I kind of look at that and I go, oh, okay, I can kind of see why you thought that.
I think the biggest thing was just that sense of like, you're not in Kansas anymore.
For me, it's more about players now noticing Boulder. Initially, in those original GDC demos, they didn't. And now he's become an integral part of the experience. And when you watch, like I watch a lot of people play the game and they just wowed by this massive giant who you get to befriend, and that's the most important part of the game for me.
I hope to one day give people bits and pieces of that journey, you know, whether it's in some kind of developer format or something they can actually walk through. We have a kind of an archive of stuff that would be fun to walk people through. I mean, the gallery has been a phenomenal adventure for Cloudhead, not just because, you know, we're on the cusp of a new technology, and mainly it was a completely new way to tell an adventure story, a classic adventure story. And there's this impulse when you do VR for the first time to get sort of instant satisfaction. That kind of, I just want to get in real quick and have some, you know, a gunfight or beat something with a sword. And those games do really well, and I understand why. But some of the more contemplative games requires a different player type, and I think the gallery still has its day coming.